So this is the second video in the series of moving objects from Revit to real-time animation. It's going to wrap up with the idea of bringing Revit into virtual reality as well. So what I'm working on here, first video was on building the site. The second video is on importing objects, primarily on importing objects from Revit into Unity. And so you can see I've already got a little bit of a start on things here. I didn't want to drag things out too long with the video. But what I'm doing in Revit is I'm breaking things into a couple of pieces. It just makes things, to me, it makes things a little bit easier to work with. You don't need to go crazy with the idea of breaking your model apart, but I'm breaking the model apart into pieces so that things are a little easier to texture map inside of Unity, so that things work just a little bit better in terms of a process. Advanced texture mapping, things like that, for Unity need to happen in 3ds Max. Texture maps typically from Revit coming over into Unity don't work out so well. Everything's going to come in with one single material defined to it. And that really is about how Revit generates an FBX file. The FBX are primarily designed to move to 3ds Max. So it's certainly a route that you can go, and that is go from Revit to 3ds Max to Unity. But those people that don't know 3ds Max, it's a big program. It can be a little bit intimidating. Anybody who wants to start working directly inside of Unity, this might be at least a very good beginning point in terms of jumping directly from Revit into Unity. So let's take a look really quick at the Revit file that I'm working with. So I'm essentially building this little dock piece to sit right on the edge of the water. And I've got a few things in here. I've got some glass and storefront stuff in here just to kind of understand how that works as well. But what I'm looking at doing is bringing these pieces in. So you can see I already have a little bit of a start. And how I've been setting this up to export different pieces is I'll isolate a piece, such as this is sort of the wood deck that's wrapping around. In fact, just let me go ahead and delete that view, and let's just build one really quick. So what I'm going to do to get this piece that sort of wraps around everything is I'm going to copy this view in Revit. So duplicate view, rename it to wood, or actually I'm using the word export first so that things get organized easily. Export wood. So in this export wood view, I'm going to select, use my sunglasses to isolate the element. Big R, export FBX. And I'm just going to name this wood. And I'm saving this file directly into my Unity. This is my Unity project right here, Unity Video 2, Assets, Model. And I'm going to click Save. And leave the temporary hide isolate on. I don't want to export everything, just this one piece. So since I've saved that directly as an FBX file into my Unity directory, you're going to see that load in right here automatically as one of my assets that I can bring into the model. And also note how Unity works, how it's going to manage this is if I do something with this file. What's that pink dude there? Oh, that pink dude actually is the wood deck, the piece that wraps around there. We'll get to that in just a bit. Zero wood. Go ahead and delete that for right now. The piece that's going to wrap around. The idea behind it is that I've isolated it so it's easier to texture map. I need to set a scale factor. Revit works in inches, I believe, and Unity works in millimeters as a base unit. So the very first thing I'm going to need to do is apply my scale factor of 0.254. Or actually, I believe Unity's works in meters is actually the correct term there. So I'm going to apply this as 0.254, and I definitely want to be able to walk across the top of this with my character controller. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on colliders as well before I bring this object in. And I can do all of those after I bring it in as well, but I want to make sure that I'm making those modifications to the model in the project window right here. Hit apply, and that's going to import that in. And so I can move it anywhere that I need to, but I want these things to be located very precisely together. So I'm going to look at my X, Y, Z, and rotation data for something that's already placed, which is this sort of steel structure that happened first. And I'm going to set that steel structure up, or I'm going to set the wood structure up, rather, with the exact same X, Y, Z, and rotation data as the steel structure already in place. So the fast way to do that is I can just click on my X, do a little Control A. Let's see here. Make sure I select everything there. Copy. And then I'm going to go to the X data on my wood and paste. I'm just going to repeat that process. Copy the Y data, paste on the steel. For the Z, copy, paste, and then the last thing I need to do is apply the Y rotational data, copy, and then paste. And so you can see that those things are now aligned exactly as they were inside of Revit. So again, it's something you don't necessarily have to do in terms of bringing these things in different pieces, but for me, the next step is a little bit easier, and that is doing the texture mapping because they're already split apart. So I'm going to apply a wood material to this. And if I want this to look a little bit nicer, I would definitely start modeling the individual pieces of wood. I'm not necessarily going to get transparency, sort of the gaps through the wood yet, but this is a good sort of first pass at how to start generating an idea that we can then further refine as the project moves forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first build a new material to house to hold all the information about the wood texture map. So to do that, I'm going to go to Assets, Create, Material, and I'm going to name this material Wood. And if you notice, that is in my Model folder, and I actually want to go ahead and slide that into my Material folder, which is part of my Models folder. So you can see I've got Wood as a material right now. The type of material I'm going to apply is going to be a diffuse bump map, or a bumped diffuse. So I've got two texture maps that I can use. One is going to control the color, the diffuse color, which will be wood. And then I'm going to take that same wood tone and apply a bump map as well, so it actually has some texture and definition to it. So to do that, I'm going to go into Photoshop really quick. So this is a texture map I've downloaded off of Mayang's Textures. Excellent website, by the way. I'm just going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to write this. This is directly into my Unity Materials folder. Wooden floorboards. One other thing to point out really quick. The image size, I've got set to 72, and I want to go ahead and set my pixel dimensions at 1024. That would be 1024. There we go. 1024 by 1024 at 72 dpi. The square textures, 1024 or 512, seem to work a little bit faster. Again, the whole notion of video game in real time is still a little bit new to me. I'm not 100% sure I understand why it's running faster, but it definitely has to do with how the texture maps work with the video cards. So I trust the research that other people have done on why these things run faster. I'll look to explain it later, perhaps. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Save on wooden floorboards and OK. And again, it's a fairly low resolution texture, but when we apply that in, it's going to look like we need it to. So with my wood texture right here, I'm just going to drag that image map right onto the wood texture, onto that material. And now what I want to do next is we want to apply this wood material to this model. So I'm going to select underneath wood the geometry right here, or I could have done that in space. And then this little materials tab right here. So this is the data. This is the inspector for this piece of geometry. I'm going to expand my materials tab, and I'm just going to drag that wood material and place it right there, what is currently called no name, and replace that with the wood. So you can see that wood texture map is now on there. It's definitely tiled a bit too small, so we're going to change the pattern at which it's going to tile. So let's go ahead and select the wood texture map, and let's drop the tiling down to, like, let's say 0.1 by 0.1. So you can see I need to do a little bit of work in seaming the material, but you can get the idea of how that's going to start coming together and looking. But now I'd also like this to look a little bit rough too. Right now it's fairly flat. So if I want to get a little bit more definition in that, I can start building a bump map to go right along with that. So in Photoshop, I need to build a different map. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go a file, save as, and let's call this wooden floorboards bump. And I do need two different texture maps for this inside of Unity. It doesn't really like, it will make some modifications to the image at times. So I usually definitely go with a distinct different image, one to drive the bump and one for the surface pattern or the diffuse pattern. So I'm going to go image, adjust, and desaturate to turn it black and white. Image, adjust, brightness, contrast. What I usually like to do is really push the white and the black values a little bit so that I get that sort of good definition in there. Because again, a bump map is going to rely on the tonality change from black and white to create variations in how the surface looks. So I'm going to say OK to that and File, Save. So back into Unity, I'm going to take this wooden floorboard bump map and place it right here. So you can see the first thing, it's definitely changed the tonality, but I also need to get the tiling to match, 0.1, 0.1. And then I want to look at this object right here. So by selecting on that texture map, I'm bringing up its values. And what I want to do is I actually want to change this. The texture map is not marked as a normal map. I'm going to go ahead and say Fix Now. And when I select this, I can change from a texture map. Let's see here. I want this to read as created from grayscale. And I can change the bumpiness down to a level that starts to work well with the overwood. So I need to pull that down quite a bit because I don't want it to look ridiculous. I want just enough to actually give that a little bit of a distressed feel to it. This is texture normal map, bumpiness, and create from grayscale are the settings for that. Okay, so let's do a quick test in play mode now in Unity. So I'm going to click the play button. And again, I'm using my walk keys to approach the back of this. So you can see I'm getting a little bit of that distressed look. Again, I definitely would need to fix how this is mapped. This is sort of, Unity's going to use a cubic mapping system as a default. So you can see seeing the edge of the wood grain here and the surface here. So, you know, that's something, again, where 3ds Max to do a really good job of mapping is important. But you can see it's the wood, having that bump map as well as the texture map really starts to drive the quality of that. Okay, so let's add in one more piece. Let's zip through the process one more time and let's get the glazing in on this little piece right here. So click stop. And let's go back into Revit and my primary 3D model. So I've already isolated the glazing in one of the scenes. Oh, I haven't yet. Oh, good. Slightly different method rather than isolate element. I'm going to use my tab key to select one of the panels, and this time I can isolate the category. So it's going to give all of the glass in the project separated out. The big R, export FBX, and we'll call this glass. Leave the temporary hide and isolate mode on. Back into Unity, my models folder, I should be able to see glass. And we'll just drag that into the scene. And again, I need to change my scale factor to 0.254. I don't really need colliders for this. I already have several things around it, the mullions, things like that. So I'm not too worried about generating colliders for this. The fewer the colliders in your scene, the faster things are going to run. So we'll just keep it as that. I need to get the glass positioned. Oh, the first thing it's going to do is apply that scale factor. That's why this little window popped up. Okay, so you can see my glass is right there. And again, I'm going to go back to the process again of just matching my XYZ data. So copy, paste, the Y values, copy, paste. I think I missed that actually. Copy. Let's try that one more time. Paste. There we go. Copy to the glass. Paste, and then the last piece that I need to do is the rotational value. Copy and paste. So that has snapped right into the location. So what I need to do next is I'm going to go into my materials folder again, assets, create material, glass. This time I'm going to use a transparent material and a bumped specular. So my main color for the glass is going to be just a little bit of a blue tone to it. And then I'm going to use the alpha channel to create the transparency. And underneath my glazing right here, I'm going to go ahead and select all of the geometry. And we're going to drop, again, we're going to replace this no name texture with the glass that I've built. And so you can start to see that that now has the right kind of transparency to it. So if I go to my glass, I can then set, maybe a little bit less transparent. Again, on the free version, you don't have reflectivity on the glass. So a little bit of specularity is going to help. You know, you want the glass to look fairly shiny. So I'm going to raise the specular color up. And I'm going to work the shininess so that it has sort of the right kind of impact. And then on something like this as well, I could add a normal map to make the glazing just a little bit inconsistent, because glass usually is. There's a little bit of a bump to it, just enough that the specular highlights vary. I'm not going to worry about it right now. That's going to be enough. I can definitely get at see that is glazing, and I've got enough specularity on there as I move around it that I can see that that's a surface. So we'll leave it as that for right now. And again, another quick test in terms of how this is working as a walkthrough. You can see it's actually a little bit too bright on this side with the sun coming from this angle right here. So probably want to do a little bit of additional modification on that. And again, that's something I can do while I'm in play mode here. You know, like I could take the specular, the shininess, and let's turn the shininess back down a little bit and just see if that makes a difference. And it definitely does. But now as soon as I hit stop, it's not going to remember those values. These are just to sort of experiment with while you're in play mode to see if things are looking correct. As soon as I hit stop, it's going to snap this back to its original value. So I know it was someplace right around the middle in terms of working with that. Let's see if I can look at that at the inside. So you can see I was originally someplace in this area, and pulling that back just a little bit is going to help that read a little bit better. Okay, so let's move on to the last couple of quick things in terms of building the scene. So if you notice, the sky is just blue right now. It's just sort of a default background color. So we want to go ahead and add in a skybox. And so that's going to be under Edit, Render Settings. And there's a skybox right here, so I'm going to click on the dot. And let's load in the Sunny 2 skybox. And you can see that immediately adds in clouds and sky. I haven't really worked yet in terms of getting clouds and things moving in the background yet. I'm sure somebody has that working well somewhere. Do a little bit of research soon on that and see what we can do. But for right now, that makes a really nice impact in terms of being able to see the clouds and sky in the background with things. And you can certainly open up these texture maps for the skybox inside of Photoshop and overlay them with different clouds, different imagery to change that background. There's several options out there and more options that you can find online for those as well. So let's go ahead and let's add in one of the next pieces of this. which would be a little bit of secondary motion to the trees and things. So again, if I hit play, you can see I've got the grass is moving sort of nicely in the breeze. It's creating a good sense of secondary motion, just sort of making the scene feel a little bit more alive. But the trees are completely stationary. So let's do a quick wind zone on this to get a little bit of secondary motion on the trees as well. So to do that, I'm going to go Assets, Create, Game Object, Create Other, and Wind Zone. And again, I kind of like to keep this stuff to the side so it's a little bit easier to select. But your wind zone is basically just a little fan icon. And you can set up what direction you want the wind blowing. So I want it to kind of blow laterally across my path so that I can see the impact of it on the trees really clearly, rather than blowing toward and away from me. If they're blowing side to side, I'll be able to read that motion a little bit better. So I've got the wind coming across in this direction. And the values for that I'm going to use are 1 as the primary wind. That's sort of the wind strength. 0.1 on turbulence. 1 on the pulse magnitude. And 0.25 on frequency. And this is sort of a global thing. I can change it to be something local as spherical. Directional is going to be not unlike an overall directional light. This is going to affect everything globally. And that's typically what I would set trees for, unless I'm wanting to do something with a specific kind of effect. You know, a helicopter flying by or something like that. So now that I have that, you can see the trees have some nice secondary motion to them. Sort of go underneath this willow tree, you'll be able to see it moving back and forth, as well as that nice tall pine tree right there, doing a little bit as well. So now I've got some secondary motion working with both the trees and the grass. I'm bringing my Revit file in and beginning to get this looking like a completed project in terms of what we can do with Unity.